Let's bring in House Foreign Affairs Committee member and Army veteran Brian Mast, who also served with Israeli forces. Congressman, good to see you. So I want to talk about the Hill first. There was a big protest outside the Capitol. That happens a lot. People come and rally and protest. But it went inside the Capitol. We saw a video of people singing. Law enforcement couldn't get them to leave. Now some are arrested. What's the status on the Hill with these protesters? And do you think they will be prosecuted to the full extent of the law?
Look, the status is they're out in the streets in different places. Capitol Police have closed off different areas, not necessarily letting members through, trying to shuttle these protesters out of there into different areas. That's the status on the Hill right now. Do I think people will be prosecuted on this? I don't have a high threshold of confidence that that will take place. Maybe a few individuals. I heard there was some graffiti on some of the walls, maybe something like that. But I just don't see there being a huge push, given what I've seen here on the Hill, for that to happen.
Congressman, the protest, of course, is about what is going on between Hamas, terror organization, and Israel, attacked by terror organization. President Biden announcing today, as part of his trip over there, that the U.S. would be giving $100 million in, quote, humanitarian aid to Gaza and the West Bank. That, of course, will wind up in the hands of Hamas. How can we be certain it won't?
Look, my mind is blown right now that's what he took the time to discuss, was giving $100 million. And in the same breath, he also said, let's start thinking also right in this moment about the two-state solution. So let's break that down a little bit. Let's give $100 million of American taxpayer money to the group that just killed all of these people, because we know there aren't videos of people out there saying, hey, stop doing that. Hey, return that person back to Israel. Take the gun off them. No, don't do that. No, all the videos you see are people supporting them and having their back to conduct these brutal acts of terrorism. And then, again, breaking that down, let's think about making a country and a state and a government out of the people that just did this, because we know they win popular election there. It's beyond comprehension, really, to think about that and to say something. Where do you put money? Let's think about the most quantifiable humanitarian aid effort that I think the United States of America ever participates in, and that is actually Iron Dome. It's the most quantifiable program to actually save lives. Every time it knocks a rocket out of the sky, you know that you're saving lives.
But $100 million, I mean, our country is broke. We're $33 trillion in debt. We don't have $100 million to give. Which is concerning me. But I want to get to this. I know it's meaningful to your heart. Republican graduates of Harvard University, including yourself, have sent a scathing letter to the university demanding that they clearly and publicly denounce the anti-Israel comments made by student groups after the Hamas attacks, saying, quote, "It is sickening that students at Harvard University have such deep hatred for Israel that they have chosen to ignore reality, celebrate ruthless terrorists, and blame innocent civilians." Now, we can't find any issue with that, but we can't say the same for the fellow alum and Democrat Congressman Jamie Raskin. He told the Harvard Crimson, quote, "I do wish that my Republican colleagues that they think it's important for the president of Harvard to condemn terrorist atrocities in the Middle East would themselves condemn violent insurrection that overran the U.S. Capitol on January 6, 2021. Congressman, you wrote the letter to Harvard. How do you respond?
Yeah, I respond. Stateside here, U.S. Capitol, the right of people to petition the government, peacefully assemble. Those that didn't peacefully assemble, they have consequences that they have to bear. Anybody says something, free speech says you can go out there and you can say what you want. But don't think that there aren't consequences for the things that you say. There are consequences, and there should be for those at Harvard as well. If you're going to be willfully ignorant and support Arab Nazis and make light of what they did and make excuse for why they might have done something, guess what? There are consequences for those individuals. And if the university is not going to condemn that, because the president of the university made a very weak statement and did not even mention those specific groups and what they did, just kind of made this blanket statement that where they tried to, bring in the Israel supporters and bring in the Palestinian supporters and not make it actually known who she's really talking about. That's unacceptable. And for alumni and people that have been supporters of Harvard in the past, it's why people are saying it is a liberal den of indoctrination, and that's what's taking place there, indoctrination.
What has gone on is because they've gotten rid of merit to admit students to all of these Ivy League schools, Congressman, and they focused on the kind of amorphous equity. That you have about half the number of Jewish students who go to these universities. That it's dropped by one half. They've been cut in half in about the last decade. And this is what happens. But broadly speaking, what kind of mind poison are these universities teaching these kids that they're not pro-Palestinian? These are pro-terrorist statements, that they are standing up for the massacre of Jewish families, that what they're preaching is that of, it's not just anti-Semitism, it's pro-Nazism. And this is coming from the top down. It's almost by design. That the university that you attended, what has happened? Because they are feeding individuals into government and to our greatest institutions.
Yeah, that black, red, white, green flag that they're draping themselves in, that Palestinian flag, should be looked at no differently than a flag with a swastika on it. It is an Arab Nazi flag. That's what it's representing in its ideology. And yeah, I think you picked the exact right words: top down, and circular, because they're making the merit. How do you identify or how do you not identify? That's the merit to them. And they're trying to take that and they're circling that into all places of government as well, whether it's the people that they make as secretaries or deputy administrators or whatever of any government agency. And they're trying to take those same individuals and make sure, not on accident, but make sure that they're in key places in government so that they continue on that ideology into these government agencies. And that's how you get this perpetuating itself from academia to government and all points in between.
Well, let's defund and let's tax these little commie camps where they indoctrinate our kids. That'll go a long way to getting them on track. But I want to get your take on this before I let you go, Congressman. On the last vote in the House race for Speaker, the current Republican nominee, Jim Jordan, he failed to secure the speakership again today after another round of votes. So what's our status? Are we going to go to another round with Jim Jordan? Is there a conversation in the House chamber, in offices, that someone else is going to rise that can get the consensus vote, get you to 217, so we can get a speaker and move on with the work of the American people?
Yeah, look, the fact is there's no vote scheduled before noon tomorrow, number one. So I suspect Representative Jordan is calling people, trying to talk to people, or deciding for himself whether he's going to step back and say, these people are hard-nosed, they're just never going to vote for me, and I will not get to the number of 218 that's needed. I'm sure that's one conversation going on. I'm sure you've heard there are people saying, hey, we need to further enable Patrick McHenry from North Carolina, the current pro tem speaker, and give him some more power so that things can happen on the floor. That's possible, and I hear more people talking about that. Or we go back behind closed doors. These are the rules of the Republican conference, which we can't ignore, that demand, hey, there's a speaker-elect. If the speaker-elect pulls out, then we have to go out there. We have to have people put their name forward, be a forum for those people to present themselves, have a vote on them. Whoever gets the most, they decide when they want to come to the floor for an actual floor vote. We are locked into that process. Elise Stefanik, the conference chair, other people, they literally can't just change the process that takes place. They have to work within our rules that we have or change the rules, which was also tried, but that didn't go forward either. So it's really those three options.
Congressman Brian Mast, great to see you. Thank you, sir, for your service and everything.
Take care.
Thank you, Brian.
Be well.